Hey friends, it's Simon Hurley and welcome to another video. Now it's been a little while since I've been down here in my craft room and I've compiled a whole pile of new crafty tools or things that might just be new to me or new storage solutions to make storing craft supplies a little bit easier, and I wanted to walk through all of them with you and share my different opinions on the tools. Some of these I'm just opening and unboxing with you, some of them I've used them for a little while, but I'm going to share all of my thoughts and opinions. That way you can decide if some of these items are right for you and your craft room. Everything I use and share in today's video will be listed and linked down below, and using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. Now without further ado, let's get right into it. Now starting off strong here, I wanted to share the new crafting surface that I've been working on as of lately. So this is a large 22 by 16 inch glass craft mat from Glassboard Studios, and it's in this beautiful gray color. Now I've shared this glass craft mat in the past in a nice white color, but I've decided to upgrade to a gray craft mat for my videos, and that way when I'm working with white cardstock, it's a lot easier to see against the gray glass craft mat. Now Glassboard Studios craft mats are super high quality. I've been working on my white one for quite some time and really love it, especially when you're getting messy with different Lunar and Solar and Astro pastes. You'll want a surface like this that's protected that you can work on. Now this has a subtle white grid all over the surface, and what's really nice about this is that the grid is printed below the glass, so nothing is going to scratch off. And also underneath the glass is this large metal magnetic surface. You can get the glassboard magnetic or without the magnet. And the reason why having that metal surface underneath the glass craft mat is really awesome is, let's say you're adhering something down. I'm going to adhere this red piece of cardstock down to my stark white cardstock. So I'll just add some Barely Arts liquid adhesive to the back of the cardstock, line it up right in the center, and adhere it right down. And then what's really great about this is you can take your magnets and just adhere these right down, and that's going to hold this down when I'm gluing. So this is my favorite use for these magnets. And you can get a couple different types of magnets from the Glassboard Studios website. You can get these little pawn magnets. Now these ones aren't the strongest compared to these larger bar magnets because there's a lot more surface area on these. So these bar magnets are my favorites to use, and they really hold down projects quite nicely. These little ones would be nice for holding down smaller things on your crafting project, maybe not the whole piece of cardstock. There's also this ruler magnet, which I can also see being sort of helpful to magnet things down, but also to do any measuring that you want to on your projects and not have the magnet move as you're doing the measuring. And there's a longer ruler as well. But then once you have those magnets in place for a while, this is all nice and dry and glued together, which is great. So if I were to go for any magnets for your glass craft mat, I would definitely go for these larger bar magnets with these nice big handles up top. It makes them really easy to lift off the surface, but they're also really nice and strong, so they're going to hold your projects down really well as you're gluing things or want to hold something in place. But I love that they have lots of different magnetic options that you can buy along with your craft mat to get even more use out of that magnetic surface that they added underneath. And now because I have that special telepathic power of knowing what you guys are going to ask before you ask it in the comment section, I wanted to let you know how these bar magnets hold up to holding down your stencils as you're doing your ink blending. Let's go in with the Sunrays stencil. This is a 2-piece layering stencil from my Simon Hurley Create collection. Now I'm going to use a little bit of mint tape to hold down my actual cardstock as I do the ink blending. So I'm just going to loop a piece behind my stark white cardstock and lay that down right in the center. Then I'll go in with one of the layers of my Sunrays stencil, going to line it up on my surface. And now this is where we're going to test out these new bar magnets. I've tested out the pawn-shaped magnets that are a little bit weaker in the past, so I'm excited to see how these hold up to holding down your stencils on your projects. So I've just laid down the magnets on that stencil holding it down, and the cardstock is held down in place with tape. Then I'm going to go in with my large Altenew blending tool and my red Bee Sting ink. Going to load this up with quite a bit of that ink, and then I'm going to go in and do some blending. I'm not going to hold down that stencil right away yet. I just want to see what it's going to blend like without holding anything down. And so far it seems to be doing a pretty good job. Now the stencil's wiggling a little bit down here, but it's not moving enough to shift the lines. And I'm putting a pretty decent amount of pressure when I'm ink blending. Now, I'm not doing it as harsh as I usually would, and I'm just doing kind of a stronger, darker ink blend in the center here to get some depth and dimension, and then I'm sort of fading it out to be a little bit lighter around the edges, just to add some depth to the blending. Now, I will say the magnets do get a little bit in the way here, so you're gonna have to move them around just a little bit, but it's not too difficult. It's looking pretty good so far. I really like that it's darker in the center and then it gets kind of lighter on the edges. All right, and then we'll lift off these magnets, and it definitely gave a really nice crisp line. It didn't shift at all. I was giving a pretty decent amount of pressure like I usually would when I'm ink blending. At first I was a little bit more hesitant, but then at the end, you know, it wasn't moving at all. I didn't really struggle with these magnets. All right, now let's go in with that second layer of the Sunray stencil. Now with these stencils, they have the etched word Sunrays on them as well as the number of the layer. So to ensure that you're lining it up correctly, just make sure you can read Sunrays both times. That's how you know the orientation is going to be correct. And then you'll just lay it down in place so that it covers up right in the center of those last sunrays. We'll place down the magnet to hold it in place, and then same thing on this one, place down that magnet to hold it in place. All right, and for this one, I'm gonna go in using a little bit of fake plant and another large alternate blending brush. Now, when it comes to blending brushes, I like to keep one for each color family. So one for all of the different green inks that I have, one for all the red inks. That way it stays nice and separate, and I don't need to clean the brush in between each use, which is really nice. And then I'm gonna go in here and just start blending on this fake plant color all over. And again, going a little bit heavier in the center, and then working my way out a little bit lighter around the edge. Now I will say these magnets do get a little bit in the way. It's not a super big deal, I guess, but it definitely, okay. So it shifted a little bit there. So if you kind of catch it at the wrong edge, it does move just a little bit. It didn't do it enough to ruin my project or anything, but for the sake of saving the rest of my project, I am just going to hold down my stencil a little bit as I do it. That way I can go as rough as I want with my ink blending and not have to worry about it at all, and just do a nice layer of blending all the way across. Again, we're keeping it nice and dark in the center here, adding a lot more ink to build up that color, and then working our way out and being lighter around the edge. That looks great. Now that little bit of shifting didn't really affect it at all. You can't really tell there was any mistake there. And this background looks really beautiful. So overall, I would say the magnets did a pretty decent job at holding the stencil down in place. So if you want them for that purpose, they definitely work. Now, would I say this is my end all be all for holding down stencils? No. Not at all. I'm not really that influencer who's just going to try to sell you on every single new thing and say it works great, right? Because it worked, but it did shift a little bit. I wasn't always applying the firmest pressure and being as careless as I would usually with ink blending, and they do get a little bit in the way sometimes. Where I could see these being very, very useful is not necessarily when I'm doing a full background like this, but let's say I'm going in with this floral stencil and I want like little bits and pieces of this pattern. Usually then, if I'm doing a more mixed media kind of approach to a background, I will hold the stencil in place with my fingers. So in that case, you know, putting it down with the magnets and just doing like sections or segments of that ink blending and not having to worry about making sure that it's held down with all the grip strength of my fingers, that's where I see this more being handy rather than doing full backgrounds. If you're just doing partial ink blending and you want to kind of build up layers with your stencils more as a second hand rather than holding everything down in place and making sure it's super secure. So my main use for these magnets is going to be holding things down to glue them down in place and to hold stencils for partial ink blending, or if I'm putting a little bit of paste down in some areas and I just want to tack it down in place for a couple of seconds as I'm blending. But I think they're awesome to have, and I think that magnetic feature definitely adds a lot more versatility to your craft mat. And something I really love about the glass mat is it just takes a little wipe of water and all of that ink residue is gone off the surface and cleaned up really nicely. And I love that it cleans anything without any worry of it staining or ruining the glass surface, which is really nice. All right, now to finish off this background, I want to add a little bit of paste. So I'm gonna go in with that same layer of the Sunray stencil right back over top of the red inked background. And now because I'm going in not super heavy handed with this paste and not a ton of it, this is a great spot to use the magnets. So like I said, they come in handy for some things. For this, I'm gonna go in with the Astro paste in the slippery and wet color, which is this beautiful golden yellow color of glitter inside of this paste. And all I'm going to do to apply this down on top of the red ink is just take a little bit on my finger and sort of tap it towards the center. And then we'll take that glob of paste and start sort of thinning it out by just tapping it down on our background. Go back into the jar when you need a little bit more paste and just continue to tap that glitter all over the background until you've got a nice golden shine over top of that red area. Now again, with this, to add a little bit more depth and dimension, I want to tap more of the golden glitter towards the center for a more concentrated look, and then I'm going to sort of thin it out by just tapping some of the excess towards the edges. And that looks great. So what's awesome about this is that you can still see all of that red. You can see the magnets did a good job of holding that down since we weren't really working in the glitter, we were just tapping it. So that's a good way to use them. And check this out. You can still see all of that beautiful red color when you look at it straight on, especially. And then when you tilt it in the light, that gold glitter really comes to life and becomes so beautiful. And I mean, what's a holiday card without a ton of glitter, am I right? While this paste is still wet, you wanna go in and clean any of the excess right off the surface. So just go in and wipe it off with a paper towel, and you wanna be quick with this because especially when you apply it so thin like that, the paste does dry really quickly. So wipe all that glitter off and then wipe it off of your glass craft sheet and you should be good to go. And now I love glitter on a holiday card more than the next person, but one thing that I don't love is when you open a holiday card and it's sort of like a glitter bomb goes off and there's glitter everywhere. But the awesome part about Astro paste is once that's dry, and because it was so thin, it only really takes a couple of minutes to dry. Once that's dry, pretty much none of that glitter is coming off your project or rubbing off on the recipient's hand, and it is still super shiny and glittery, and you don't have the mess of glue or anything like that. Just the paste really holds that glitter onto the project nicely and kind of adheres it down beautifully. Now, because we're talking all about stenciling, I do want to share my most favorite tool for holding down stencils in place, and that would be these Altenew Extra Sticky Grip Mats. These are really great. They've got a textured side on one side and a smooth side on the other. You're going to place the textured side down on whatever work surface you're using. It's really awesome because this really grips down nicely to the glass mat surface. So it's going to be nice and stuck down there and not move. And then this top smooth surface gives you a nice, smooth, grippy and sticky area that you can do your stenciling. So I'm going to start off by doing a little bit of ink blending. I really only love to use these grip mats for ink blending and not necessarily pastes and stuff like that. I just find the ink cleans off a lot easier, so I'd rather use that on top of this surface. So that cardstock is nice and stuck down, no worry. Then I'm gonna go in with my polka dot assortment stencil. This has 4 different layers of polka dots in it, which is really awesome. So you get a really big polka dot, you get a medium polka dot, one that's even smaller, and then one that's super tiny. I'm gonna wanna use this second largest polka dot pattern from the set and just use this one by itself, but you could layer them all together as well to create a really great 3D effect. Now, whenever I'm using my Hurley stencils with these sticky mats, you do wanna make sure you use the glossy side like this, facing down towards the sticky side of the mat. And this more matte side of the stencil needs to be facing up towards you. So glossy side down towards the sticky side of the mat. There is a coating on top of these stencils on that matte side. So you want to stick the glossy side down towards the mat to make sure that coating doesn't peel off your stencil. And then you'll just stick the sides of the stencil that are remaining down into that sticky mat, and this isn't going anywhere. And for this one, I'm going to use that Midnight Snack ink pad. And I like this extra large sticky mat as well because there's a little bit room on these edges to hold down your ink pads in place as well. So that when you're inking that up, you don't even need to hold down or worry about holding it in place. And then you can just focus on ink blending onto your project. And you can be as rough as you want when you're ink blending on top of this because it's not moving anywhere, that stencil isn't going anywhere, and neither is the cardstock, and there was no tape needed. All right, then we'll go in and peel off the stencil, and listen to this. You can tell that was stuck down in place really nicely, and you're not gonna have to worry about it at all. Then we can lift this off, and I love this blue on blue look. So that Midnight Snack ink on this dark navy colored cardstock gives you that really great, elegant dotted look, but it doesn't stand out too much from the background. It just adds a little bit of beautiful texture. So when it comes to these sticky mats, you wanna make sure to clean them off. I like to just clean this with a little bit of water because my Hurley Create ink reacts really well with water and cleans off really easily. So my inks aren't going to stain the surface of this. Some inks will stain, but remember, a stain stamp is a loved stamp, and because this is made out of that same photopolymer material as a stamp, some inks are just going to naturally stain it. You can try using a stamp cleaner to clean off other brands of inks, But like I said, summer is going to stain, and that's just par with the course with something like this, but it works really well. So I clean it off with a lint-free cloth and some water, and once that water evaporates off the surface, this is already super sticky again. If you notice it not sticking as much, there might be some dust and debris on it, so spray it with water again and wipe it down, and then it'll be good as new and really nice and sticky again to keep using on your projects. So I'm going to lift this off and move it off to the side as we work on our next part of the project. So for the next layer of the background, I want to show you how well the Lunar paste works on your glass craft mat and how beautiful it's going to look on this background. So for this, instead of using that sticky mat, because the paste is just a little bit messier, I just prefer to add a little bit of mint tape down on the back and just hold things down using my mint tape. And I'm going to go in with that exact same layer of these polka dots, but this time I'm going to shift it a little bit to the right, and I'll line it up so that all of these new polka dots are right in between the last layer. So it's going to complete the pattern really nicely. And then I'll go in using a bit of mint tape to hold this down. And for this, I'm gonna go with a little bit of an unexpected kind of Christmas color combination. I'm gonna go in using a little bit of refined copper, which is this beautiful kind of brassy orange color, coppery tone, and it is so stunning and beautiful. Check that out. I think it's going to be gorgeous on this polka dot pattern and look really nice and regal. So I'll just add lots of this paste right down at the top of that background. This is my favorite way to apply the paste and get a really nice smooth look, because then I'm gonna go in with the scraper tool. This comes in my paste tool set. You get 2 of these scrapers and 1 palette knife. And I'm just going to take the scraper and just swipe it all the way down the background. And now, if you keep going like this and you're not getting your whole paste covered, but there's still a lot of paste on your tool, you want to just kind of take this tool and tilt it downward a little bit more. That's going to dispense the paste a little bit more on your surface there, and then you can swipe it down all the way on your project, really nice and easily. So you don't need to press harder to get more paste, you just want to tilt it downward, and that will disperse the paste more. Now, to smooth it all out, you'll want to tilt your tool back upward and scrape across the background once you've got it all covered, and that's going to swipe off any of the excess paste and make it nice and smooth. Then you can take any of the excess from your tool with your palette knife and put it right back into the jar. So that's my favorite way to do it. You put a lot more than you need. You can smoothly run it across the background and then put any of the excess right back into the jar, and you're ready to go for the next project. All right, then we'll go in and lift this right off the surface there and check out how gorgeous those polka dots look. And it completed that pattern really beautifully with that copper color. I love how it turned out. All right, now let's talk about cleanup, because I know that's an important part of the crafty process, and especially when you make a lot of a mess with paste, it can be a little bit difficult to clean up. But it's really easy with the glass craft mat, and that's why I recommend having a surface like this or some sort of crafting work surface, because it makes it easy to clean up once you're done. And then using a paste or a product like this won't be so intimidating. As long as you clean off the paste when it's still wet, it's really easy to clean off. So I just spray down lots of water, which helps to break down the paste, and then go in with some paper towel and clean it off the surface and off your stencil. And then once you got most of that paste off, I go in with a little bit of a microfiber cloth. It's a little bit easier to wipe things down with, and just be sure to clean everything nice and thoroughly. And thankfully with the Lunar, Solar, and Astro pastes, they are heat stable, so you can heat set these with a heat tool. Just make sure to keep it moving across the surface so you don't boil them or bubble them. But this makes it really easy for people who are impatient like me. I'm a super impatient crafter, and this should only take a couple of minutes with a heat tool to dry it and keep moving to the next step of the project. And check out how gorgeous that background is. Once it's all dry, that shine really comes to life and it becomes super, super metallic. And I think these colors look really great together because that refined copper is sort of got a little bit of an orangey undertone to it. And because blue and orange are complementary colors on the color wheel, this really gorgeous navy color looks amazing with that refined copper metallic color. I absolutely love it, and that shine is just unreal. So to finish off some of the card backgrounds that we started, we're going to do some stamping and die cutting, and we'll take a couple looks at some more crafting products as we do that. So to do some stamping, we're going to go in with the Silly Santas stamp set, but you'll notice that this isn't in my usual Simon Hurley packaging that it comes in. And that's because I've started to use stamp pockets now, and these have been really awesome. I've been looking for a stamp pocket that fits my Simon Hurley stamp sets because they're so large. This is a 6x9 stamp set, and you can see the packaging is even a little bit larger than that. These stamp pockets happen to be from Altenew, but what I really love about them is that they're super sturdy. They've got a little flap at the top that you just tuck in there, and then I'm able to keep the stamp set packaging along with the stamp set in here really nicely, but then I'm also able to keep the die set inside of that same pocket right behind my stamp packaging. And this is thick die storage too. This is the ones from Stampin' Storage. These are super thick and sturdy. They got kind of a chipboard backing on them. I highly recommend them because none of my dies fall off of them when I'm kind of handling them, but they're really easy to just bend a little bit and get the die off if you need it. So this is how I've been storing my stamps lately. And what I love so much about it is that they're really sturdy because it has this sort of sealed edge here that folds over. I'm not worried about the edges of these ripping, even with both the stamp and die set along in here. I've had some pockets rip in the past and I didn't love them. And so because of this kind of really nice sealed edge and this super sturdy plastic, I feel like these are going to really withstand the test of time and be great for my stamp storage. So again, all I do is I just take the stamp set out of its packaging, put it right inside of here, and then the die set just goes right in behind it. And previously I had been storing all of the coordinated dies just separate from their stamp set, and it just was not working out well. So this is really nice. It works out super well. And then you just take this little sleeve here and it just tucks right in to that little slit there and seals off nicely. And then nothing is falling out of here and it's super nicely stored inside of the pocket. So I've been slowly switching over all of my stamp sets, but I think this is going to be a really great storage system for me. All right, and while we're on the topic of stamp storage, let's just take a brief intermission from crafting and talk a little bit more about my storage. So I have been really loving these Tonic Studios plastic storage bins for my craft storage for years now. I've been recommending them all the time, but Tonic actually discontinued this specific bin a couple years back after I purchased it, so it was hard to link for you guys. It was hard to show anyone, but what I love so much about this bin is that you can also buy these luxury storage divider bars that go along with them. And what makes these really special is that they are perfectly sized for these plastic containers, and it makes them really easy to divide off these bins. So they just kind of fit on the plastic bin right like this. They fit nice and tight, so they're not going to move around. Once you've got it slotted in there, it's not going to move at all. I really like how nice and sturdy that is. And this then allows you to use the bin for more than one thing, which I find to be super helpful. And you're also able to then move this divider to fit your needs. So let's say one thing is a lot bigger than the other, you can kind of move it forward, but if that collection grows more, you can take out the divider or move it around. This has been one of my favorite storage units for my drawers. I put these bins in my drawers next to me and it really divides it off nicely so I can have my most used products in here rather than having to fill up the whole bin and kind of shuffle through things. So to show you them in action here, this is one of those Tonic Studios bins. You can see the divider is there, kind of more towards the front here. I have all of my Simon Hurley Create stencils up front, really easy for me to grab and access. And then separated from that, so you don't have to move these stencils at all when you want to go through this back section. And back here, I have all of my Simon Hurley stamps, really easy to flip through separate from the stencils. And I'm able to grab the one that I want to start working with and pull it out really easily without all of the stencils falling. So I love that separator. It is really a game changer. And I am so glad these bins are finally back in stock and I can start recommending them to you guys again because I was sort of trying to find alternatives. I cannot find something like it for the life of me. So I'm really thankful to Tonic Studios for bringing that back so I can recommend it and pick up a couple while you still can, because who knows when they might discontinue it again. Honestly, I can never be sure. So I stocked up for myself so that I have a couple more dividers and a couple more containers for some of my other stamp storage that's in my larger cabinet. Okay, now back to the stamping. So I'm using this Silly Santa stamp set, and I love this one because of all of these solid images. It makes it really easy to stamp them and not color them in, which I'm a big fan of because I'm a lazy crafter, like I said. So I want to do this one that's holding his gifts because he'll be great on the front and center of the card. Get it out. And then I think I'm gonna do the sentiment that says, "You're on the naughty list." I think that's funny. And I'll just add this to my acrylic blocks. Now I love this acrylic block set from my line because they're nice and thin, but they're not too thin, so they're easy to grip onto. And it comes in a pack of 2. So you get one for sentiments and one for larger images, which is great. Pause, I so take that back. For this next technique, we're gonna wanna use a stamping tool. So we're switching it out into the Misty here so we can double stamp it. Inside of here, I have one of the waffle flower sticky mats, so it makes it easy that I can stick it down and make sure it's not gonna move without using any magnets, which is nice. And then I'll take these same images off those acrylic blocks actually, and we're just going to place them into the stamping tool. That's great, then we'll pick them up. And I want to do some double stamping with these to get some extra shading because it's just one solid image. So I'm starting off with a little bit of Bee Sting from my Simon Hurley line of inks, and I'm just going to ink up and stamp down both the sentiment and the Santa image in that red ink. Right, that looks great. And if we need to, we can always double stamp it, which is what I love about using the MISTI to make sure that it's nice and solid. And that looks great, super solid. And then to do the shading, I'm gonna use a little bit of Game Over ink, which is a much darker, more maroon color. And I'm gonna go in with a new product. This is the Micro Blending Brush Set from Altenew. It has 2 number 7 brushes and 2 number 10 brushes in it, which are nice and small for little details. Now I bought a couple packs of these because like I said, I like them for multiple color families. I keep them with these other mini blending brushes in this actually lipstick organizer out of all things. I'll link that down below too in case you wanna check it out. But then I just have one for each color family here. So I'll grab a new one for red. So the number 10 is pretty small, and then this one is even tinier, so you can really get into little details when you're stenciling, which is super nice. Now today we're actually not using them for stenciling, we're using them to do some shading on our stamps. So I'll just ink this up a little bit because going in on this image with the ink pad would be kind of a lot because the ink pad is really large. So instead, I'm just gonna go in with the blending brush and just add some shading around the edges of the image. And you can really get into the details of the image much more with a small little blending brush like this. And it's really nice for little areas of stencils and things like that too. So just going around, and then the blending brush bristles help to kind of soften it on the edges to make sure you're gonna get a nice smooth and soft transition from that dark color to the lighter one. So you can see it's already adding a little bit of ink, but this is why I like the MISTI, because I'm gonna go in 2 to 3 times around just doing this, and you'll get a really nice dark edge on the image. And that adds so much great shading and depth and makes it look nice and round. And I'll do the same thing with the sentiment too. Now the cool part about the sentiment is because this is so small, I can actually go in on the individual words and shade them in, which is kind of cool. It'll give me a really unique shaded look. And I'll just shade Naughty List a little bit darker on the bottoms of the image. So on the words Naughty List, it's just a little bit darker on the bottom edge of those, and it really highlights that sentiment really nicely. All right, well, we've got it down in our MISTI. Why not add a little bit of Christmas magic and sparkle to Santa Claus himself? So I'm gonna go back in using a little bit of that Slippery and Wet Astro paste. You could go in using a little bit of that Bee Sting if you wanted it to match the red, but because there's that gold in the background, I want it to more match that. And I'm just going to paint it on this time. So a really great new way to use the Astro paste is just painting it with a brush. And if you want to, I'm gonna actually want to spread this out just a little bit more, make it just a little bit thinner, go into my finger and just blot it a little bit. But I don't want there to be too much glitter. I want you to still be able to see the red. So honestly, a really tiny amount on that brush and just add little flecks of glitter here and there on the Santa suit. We'll peel this out. And now I do want to say you want to clean that brush out because otherwise it's going to get really stiff and you're not going to be able to use it. So make sure that all of that paste is out of that brush and then you're good to go. All right, and then again, because we applied it so thin, it dries really quickly, but all you see is red when you look straight on. And then look, so much glitter and sparkle when you tilt it in the light. It truly is incredible. I love it, and I love that you can still see all that red. It's not blocking it. So gorgeous. All right, now let's go in and do a little bit of die cutting, and all I need to do is look in the back of my storage packet. You have the dies here, and then we'll find the one that coordinates. There's also little ho-ho-ho dies in case you want to use that too. Now, when I tape down this die, I usually use the mint tape roll, and this is the 1-inch size. They have a 1-inch size, they have a 4-inch roll, which is a little bit larger. I like to use that for masking techniques. But now they just recently released a 1/2-inch mint tape and a 1/4-inch mint tape, which are much thinner. Now, I don't know, I think the 1/2-inch could be really fun for taping just dies down because you're using a little bit less of the product, less tape, less surface area, less worry about it ripping, even though this never rips my cardstock. But if you guys watch my videos, you know just how big of a fan I am of mint tape and all that you can do with it. So I love that they introduced even more sizes for more versatility. So I'm going to line this die up right above this Santa. So we'll tape it right down on the surface. I like that it holds it down nicely without going in on the image because it's a lot thinner and you don't have to use as much. You can really tell the size difference there. Now I'm gonna show another technique with those in a second, but I just wanted to introduce them right now. I think it's awesome that they have those new sizes. All right, so I'm gonna place this right in my die cutting machine and then we'll run this right through the die cutting machine. And I figured if I'm cutting out an image of Santa, I might as well dress like him. We'll stare at each other as we awkwardly die cut this out. Ho, ho, ho. It's times like these where I just really can't explain my job to anyone. All right, and that cut out perfectly, and guess what? That mint tape didn't rip my cardstock at all. And if you get a little piece like this on it, all you do is just peel that right off, and it doesn't rip. All right, that's itchy. All right, and there's not a die for the sentiment, so to fussy cut this out, I'm just going to cut right along the sentiment, leaving just a little bit of a white border all the way around. This gives it a nice finished look rather than just leaving it on a rectangle of cardstock. And to do this, I'm using my Fiskars Spring Assist scissors. I love that these spring back out at you so your hands don't get tired, and I also find that helps me get a much smoother line on the images. So if you struggle with fussy cutting, I highly recommend these scissors. Okay, this is not new, but I recently restocked because I love these so much. I got the Action Wobblers, but I also got this huge pack of mini Action Wobblers. I didn't know these existed, but this is much easier to put behind an image like this where it's a lot smaller. And these aren't very expensive either, but they add a ton of dimension and kind of an interactive element to your cards. So we'll peel these pieces off. And then you just place it right behind the Santa image. And then I'll just adhere the base of the spring to the center of the sunray. And that gives it tons of dimension and a little bit of wobble. And then when you shake it like this, it kind of wobbles back and forth really nicely on the card, which gives it such a fun element. And I like these because they collapse really well and go through the mail really nicely in the envelope. And then when you open it up, it pops out and can wobble. And then I'll adhere that sentiment down right below it on some foam tape. And there's a look at that finished card. I absolutely love how it looks with that really great stencil background that looks almost like a peppermint pattern. And then the adorable Santa on top that wobbles on the front and center of that card is such a great finishing touch to it. And I love that we were able to use that Astro paste to give all of that insane glitter when you tilt it in the light. It is so beautiful and sparkly, and I love that none of it comes off on your fingers. I can't wait to give this card out for Christmas. But to finish off this background, I'm going to do some die cutting using the vintage layered ornament set, which is from my new collection with spellbinders. And I think I'm just gonna let's do this simple ornament right in the center. I wanna cut it out with white and silver. I think that's gonna look really good. And I'll do this ornament top. Maybe I'll do the bow too, just to see how it looks, I'm not sure. And to do this die cutting, I'm going to test out the magnetic magic mat from scrapbook.com. I wanted to try this for a little while and see if it works in your die cutting machine. Supposedly this is supposed to replace one of the cutting plates in that sandwich. I want to see how it works, and this side is magnetic. They have a regular magic mat too if you want to try that one out, but I wanted to see how this magnetic surface worked since it's new. All right, and I love that with it you have this little scanning thing here, and it'll show you the different die cutting sandwiches for different machines, which is super helpful. For me, I'm using the Platinum 6 die cutting machine. So I'm gonna use the A platform base, the B platform top. I'm gonna take out the cutting plate that I've cut a lot into. Then I'll place down the magnetic magic mat. Going to lay in my stark white cardstock as well as some silver cardstock. So I'm gonna cut the outer layer of the ornament out of the silver cardstock as well as the strings. That's stuck down nicely with the magnets. Out of the white cardstock, I'm gonna place down the bow pieces. And it's holding in place. I mean, it does move and shift a little bit if you move with your finger, but it does seem to be like grabbing down to the magnets there. And then I'm going to place down the top of the ornament. See, like that stuck really nicely. So I will say it's not magnetic in the sense where it's not gonna shift, but let's see if it shifts with our die cutting plates. I think it shouldn't move under the pressure of this too much. All right, and then we'll run this right through our die cutting machine. All right, and let's see if it cut out. I'm excited. All right, so it cut through the images nicely here. Got the top of the bow. We'll pop those little pieces out. All right, and then it cut out all of these really nicely too, so we have the strings and the different pieces. And before we do any more die cutting, this is a good segue into our next product that's new for me, which is these craft Stax trays from Spellbinders. Now, I've used something similar from scrapbook.com. I'll actually share both of them here so you can decide which ones you want. And there's different size ones from each brand, so you can really decide which ones you like. Spellbinders has the medium tray set as well as these much larger trays, which is really nice, and then a combo, which has 2 of the small ones and 1 of the big tray set. So inside of this small tray set, there's actually 4 different trays inside of here, but the cool part about these Spellbinders trays is that each one of the trays individually has a little lid on it. So you get this nice deeper tray, and then you can put the lid on top, and I like that the lid has a little bit of a lip to it, so it also acts as another sort of little tray, and then, of course, these all stack on top of each other. So you almost have like 8 little cubbies you can put your stuff into since this has a little lip on it. So that little addition of the lid is really nice, and the lid isn't coming off without just a little bit of force. So I like that it's not just going to fly off when you're die cutting. So you can really organize dies in here and keep them there for a while. And then we have these much larger trays, and now these come 2 in a pack. And then again with these, it has the large lid that's on top of it, so you get lots of space in there to store. And then these small containers fit 2 right on top here. So if you want to stack them this way with the large ones, you totally can as well. I like that they're super modular. I like that they have those lids. That's really helpful and super awesome. Now these scrapbook.com ones that I've been using are a little bit smaller, so you can see the difference in size compared to the Spellbinders containers. I'm still gonna keep using these. I like that small footprint for the desk for some little die cuts and stuff. And then of course these stack on top of each other really easily. These don't have lids, but if you want more easier access to them, that's really nice to have as well. Whereas I feel like these are more kind of for sealing them off in storage and then pulling them out and using them later. Whereas I keep these on my desk at all times. The one thing that I really do like about these smaller Spellbinders ones too though, is that the corners aren't as rounded and this container is large enough for an A2 size card. This is an A2 size card base. So that's really nice, whereas this doesn't fit that A2 size card. So this is more for little die cuts. You can even store kind of finished projects in here or projects that you want to complete in here, which is awesome. And then if you want to sort of like kit your projects out to what you're creating, these large ones could be really cool lifting off that lid because you can put like a full stamp set in here. This is a 6x9" stamp set. And then you can put like all the supplies you need to make that card and then bring it on the go with you. So I think that's super cool. And then of course you have that lid, so it makes it a little bit easier to transport and travel with if you're going to crops or going to your friend's house with some supplies. I know that was long-winded, get to the point, Simon, right? So what I'm going to do is I like these little containers. I'm going to use these Spellbinders ones to just throw all of the little die cut pieces that you've cut out right into there. That way they don't get lost and you have everything that you need in order to glue these pieces down. Now, of course, here we only have one ornament, but I don't want to lose those tiny little pieces for the bow. So having a container like this is really helpful, especially when you're making things with several different pieces where you're kind of mass producing Christmas cards. It's really great to have them in this tray and then not lose anything, and you can kind of bring this wherever you're crafting. I also love to pre-make die cuts or pre-make sentiments. Keep them in here. This lid is then great for storage or keeping the dust out of there, and then I'll kind of store it for later. So I'll like make birthday sentiments in one and then foil other sentiments in the other, and it's a really great little storage solution for all those pieces. All right, then to die cut out the pieces, I'm going to place this outline right down. Then I'll take the detailed piece and place it right inside and center it up. Then I'll use a strip of that mint tape to just tape this down and hold those dies together and in place. All right, then let's die cut this out of the white cardstock. And again, we'll try our hand at using this magnetic magic mat. So that's stuck down pretty nicely. Again, it does shift a little bit, but at least it holds it in place. It's probably not for precision work, but more just kind of placing it down and at least having kind of the knowledge that it's not really going to move or shift from your cardstock. Because sometimes I don't tape my dies down if I don't need it to be perfect, and then they fly all over the place and I have to fix them halfway through the machine. So this is kind of nice. All right, and when that cuts out, it cuts out all of these little intricate pieces that are on the inside of that die then. So we'll pop those right out of the ornament. Now on the magnetic mat, I'm not gonna comment on it a ton right now if it really works or if it really doesn't, if it's a game changer. I do think it is quite nice. It's kind of self-healing, so it's not going to get as damaged as your cutting plate. I do assume that at some point it's going to kind of warp a little bit if you use it a ton, especially in the same spots. So move your dies around as you're using it to try to avoid that. I don't think anything is truly magic and is gonna last forever, but maybe this might be a good solution to die cutting and the warping cutting plates if you have that. I would love to hear from you guys in the comments down below if you use the magic mat or if you've used this magnetic mat and what you think of it. I always love a little dialogue down there. If it's worked for you, I would love to hear, because some things just take time for testing and I can't run it through the die cutting machine a million times right now. All right, now with this, I want it to just be the most subtle little blue color you've ever seen. So I'm going in with just a tiny little bit of breakup blue around the edge. I just want to give this a little tiny bit of color, and I'll just blend that slightly onto the edge of this ornament. I really love this soft blue color that breakup blue gives. Isn't that just stunning? Just a little touch of blue. And I'll do the same thing for the edges of this bow, just giving it a little bit of color. All right, then let's glue this ornament together. So I'm just adding a little bit of liquid adhesive all over the back. And then I'll add this down onto that shiny silver layer. And I'm hoping this silver doesn't clash with that copper that we added earlier. Of course, you could add a copper layer here, but I thought that would be too much with the white. And I guess mixing metals is all the rage nowadays. So hopefully that's okay to mix these metallics. Then I'll glue on the ornament topper layer to add more detail to this, and I'll glue that right onto the ornament. And then for the bow, I'll just glue these two pieces together, and then I'll glue that string right down to the card, and then I'll pop that ornament right on some foam tape. And then I really like how this bow finishes it off, so I'll just glue the bow right above the ornament on that string, and that finishes it off really beautifully and makes it look super elegant. And I think the silver and refined copper actually look quite good together. Makes the ornament stand out nicely. And for this, I'm going to stamp down a Merry Christmas sentiment from the Halftone holiday set. I love all the images in here, but the sentiments are really amazing as well. All right, so this time I really am using one of those sentiment acrylic blocks, and I'm gonna do some white heat embossing on that same navy colored cardstock that we used for the background. So I'll stamp down my sentiment in some clear, sticky Versamark ink, give it some good pressure. And then I'll throw over a layer of the white heat embossing powder and tap off any of the excess. And then I'll heat set this until it's nice and bright white. And then I'll adhere that sentiment on some foam tape right below the ornament. And I love that it blends in with that blue background, but the white heat embossing really makes the sentiment stand out beautifully. And here's a closer look at that finished card. I love that shiny polka dot background that we created using the polka dot assortment stencil and that refined copper lunar paste. It is so stunning and metallic. And then finishing it off with the vintage layered ornaments really makes it look so elegant. And I was gonna wrap up the video there, but I did promise you that I would show you some ways to use the thin rolls of that mint tape. I'm sure I'll use this in many more videos in the future to create really fun designs, but I just wanted to show it quickly before we finished off the video. So I'm gonna go in with the 1/4 inch mint tape and cut off a little piece from the roll. Now, the awesome part about having the lines on my grid mat here is I can sort of align the design to the lines on that grid mat, so I like having those. Oh wait, this is 1/4 actually. This is 1/2 inch, and then this is the 1 inch. So you can see those sizes there. I think I've been calling the other one 1/4 inch, but this is the 1/4 inch. It's much skinnier, and I can just line these up next to each other and lay them down. Then I'll put one piece on this side as well. And so it's just a fun way to create designs, and I'm sure there's lots of other ways to use this tape too, but this is just like the first thing that came to my mind when I saw it, and I was super excited about just creating kind of some plaid designs across my card. If you know me, you know I love a good plaid, and I think this is going to be tons of fun for not just Christmas cards. I love it for like fall plaid too. You can create a little spring plaid, just depending on whatever colors you decide to use for the design. Then let's do the same thing, but we're gonna go the opposite direction. All right, so I'm going to try to align it with the similar grid lines to what I did on the other side. It's probably not gonna be perfect. If you spend more time on it, it'll definitely look a little bit better, but I just want to create the same pattern now, going in this opposite direction to create a beautiful looking plaid. All right, now let's do a little blend again. So I'm gonna go in using Bee Sting and this large Altenew blending brush. I'm gonna come in from this side and sort of blend it at the bottom, kind of concentrated more in this area, and then sort of fading lightly up to the top. I think that's going to be really pretty like that. And if you want to, I'm gonna use that same blending brush because I have one for each color family, and this is another red, and I'm just gonna go in with Game Over, which is gonna give me that kind of maroonish, darker tone at the bottom there and really shade that in nicely. And you guys, I know this can make mud, so be careful with it. I'm not going to like really blend it together. I'm just gonna kind of meet it right in the center and sort of stop there and let it blend just a little bit, but not enough where you notice that it's really creating a brown tone in the center, and then I'll fade that up. Here I'm using a little bit of lighter Gator, and then again, same blending brush, and I'll go in using a little bit of Fake Plant, which is that much darker green, and we'll bring that in at the bottom and fade it upwards. I told you I like sparkle more than the next person on a holiday card, so you gotta believe me now. I'm gonna use a little bit of Bee Sting Astro paste this time, so we're switching it up with the color. Again, I'll just take a little bit on my finger, and I'll just go in and take a little glob and then lightly kind of blot it out until we get a little further up, and then fade it out with some of the excess glitter that's on my finger. And then I'll bring in a little bit of later Gator, which is this beautiful green glitter. So I like that you can sort of coordinate it with the ink colors that you use. It's going to be really beautiful on this card. And then I'm just going to take a glob of that green at the bottom here, and then again, just slowly work my way upward in that blotting motion. You don't want to rub because it's going to just move the glitter around. This blotting motion is going to just apply the glitter really nicely and give just a little bit of glitter all the way across. All right, and then let's do a little peel to reveal here. So just gently peel back that mint tape. Now, it usually never rips my cardstock. You still want to be a little bit careful and not go too quick as you're peeling, especially with tapes. One of my biggest tips is to kind of peel back on itself rather than peeling upward. I find that that's really helpful, but I really have no worries that this is going to rip my cardstock at all. And check out how crisp, clean, and white those beautiful lines are from this plaid that we created. I'm loving it already. I'm obsessed. Now, I might have gone a little bit tape heavy. Maybe you want to add a little bit more color and less stripes. Maybe you want to just go in one direction and make it look like a candy cane, but I think it's beautiful. And then you can add sort of like a floral in the center where it all meets. And I love that little bit of glitter that we added as well. It looks stunning. So a really great masking tape that I use for pretty much everything, and I'm glad that it's available in smaller sizes now. These smaller ones and the sort of large 4-inch roll are more kind of technique tapes, where I think I see myself using the 1-inch mint tape on an everyday basis. And of course, I can't let you go yet because I have one more idea using the plaid builder stamp. I think this is going to be really fun, and I'm just going to peel out a couple of the stripes that I want to use. Now, the awesome part about this is each piece of this plaid is available to peel it apart, so you can create your own plaid designs, but you can also stamp it all as one background, which is cool. So I'll just peel out some stripes that I want to use. And then when it comes to using strips of the background stamps, I like to go in with my large Simon Hurley Create acrylic blocks. These are quite a bit larger than the small ones, and they fit little pieces of the background stamps really nicely, so you can stamp them individually like this. And what's fun about this is you can then take these stripes and sort of fill in the area. So if you went a little too tape happy like I did, and there's a little too much white in your design, you can go back in with some colors and stamp them right in, which I think is gonna look really cool. Check that out. It fits perfectly in that little gap. And stamping it right into the design. You thought I was done there, but now we can crisscross them, so you can just go the opposite direction like this and stamp it in place. And then the pattern of the design sort of interlocks like a plaid really would. And that is why I love these plaid stamps for building a pattern out like this. It's just gorgeous. And then with this stripe, I'll take the fake plant. And I love that each one of these plaid stripes in that stamp are completely different. So this one has 2 stripes that sort of have like a candy cane design going all throughout them. And that will just fill in this area really nicely. And I'll continue stamping that until the whole pattern is filled in. And now I can of course cut off where it didn't stamp up there, but check out how fun that is. Filling in the design with that plaid builder peel apart stamp really finishes it off nicely, but I love that we were able to mask off those stripes with the different sizes of mint tape, blend, and then add that little bit of beautiful glitter from the Astro paste. All right, now that I'm all finished yapping, that's it for today's video. Thank you all so much for watching and spending some time with me today. Leave me a comment down below letting me know which card was your favorite and also which product that I shared is your favorite. If you have them, let me know how you feel about each one. I would love to hear from you guys down there. And remember, everything I used in today's video is listed in links down below, and using those links helps support me, so I really appreciate it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon in another card making and crafting video.